The world shattered, buildings crumbled, dust filled the air, thick and choking. We emerged from the wreckage, dazed and terrified, our once familiar town now a graveyard of memories. We found each other, survivors drawn together by fear and desperation. A ragtag group united by tragedy. We shared what little food and water we had left. Hope, a fragile thing, flickered in the ruins. Days blurred into nights. The aftershocks still rattled our bones. We clung to each other, finding solace in shared stories, shared grief. Then the whispers started, a shadow seen lurking in the debris, supplies vanishing. Fear tightened its grip. Our haven, built on the ruins of our lives, felt less safe. We were prey, hunted in the shadows of our shattered world. The earth had stopped trembling, but a new terror had begun. The first death came swiftly, brutally. Old Mrs. Henderson, found lifeless near the makeshift well, her neck broken. Accident, some said. The aftershocks, but the whispers grew louder. Doubt, like a virus, infected our fragile community. We turned on each other, suspicion in our eyes, every cough, every glance scrutinized, the bonds of shared trauma fraying at the edges. We were no longer survivors but suspects. Paul, a stranger who'd wandered into our camp a few days after the quake, became the focus of our fear. He was quiet, kept to himself, his eyes dark and watchful. He was an outsider, his past a blank slate. I saw the fear in their eyes when he was near, heard the whispers that followed him like a shroud, but I felt drawn to him, to his silence, his strength. He was a puzzle I felt compelled to solve. Section 5. A flicker of recognition. The killings continued, each death more gruesome than the last. The fear became a living thing, suffocating us. Then one night, I saw him. A fleeting glimpse in the pale moonlight. Paul, standing over the latest victim, his hands covered in blood, my breath caught in my throat. I knew, with chilling certainty, that he was the monster in our midst. But how? Why? Section 6. The face in the mirror. I woke with a gasp, my heart pounding against my ribs. The room was dark, the shadows long and menacing. I could still feel the remnants of the nightmare clinging to my consciousness, refusing to let go. The nightmare. Paul, the blood, the fear, it was all so vivid, so horrifyingly real. I could see his face, twisted in agony, his hands reaching out to me, covered in blood. The fear in his eyes mirrored my own. It felt so real, the terror clinging to me like a shroud. I could still hear his voice, a desperate whisper echoing in my mind. "Help me," he had said, his voice breaking. "Please, help me." I stumbled to the cracked mirror, needing to see my own face, to ground myself in reality. My legs felt weak, my steps unsteady. The room seemed to spin around me, the walls closing in. But as I stared at my reflection, a wave of dizziness washed over me. My vision blurred, and for a moment I thought I might faint. I gripped the edge of the mirror, trying to steady myself, the face staring back at me. It wasn't mine, it was Paul's. His eyes, filled with pain and fear, looked back at me from the glass. I blinked, hoping it was just a trick of the light. But the image remained, and his hands, my hands, were covered in blood. The crimson liquid dripped from my fingers, staining the sink below. I could feel the warmth of it, the stickiness. It was as if the nightmare had followed me into the waking world. I backed away from the mirror, my heart racing, my mind reeling. What was happening? Was I losing my mind? I collapsed to the floor, clutching my head, trying to make sense of the impossible. I sat there, rocking back and forth, my breath coming in short, panicked gasps. I looked down at my hands, trembling, expecting to see the blood, but they were clean. The mirror, however, still showed the horrifying image. I knew I had to face it, whatever it was. I couldn't let the fear control me. With a deep breath, I stood up and approached the mirror once more, determined to confront the face staring back at me. As I got closer, the image began to change. Slowly, Paul's face faded, and my own reflection returned. Relief washed over me, but the questions remained. What had I seen, and why? I sat back on the bed, my mind racing. Was it just a hallucination, a lingering effect of the nightmare, or was there something more to it? I glanced at the mirror, the crack running through it like a scar, and wondered what secrets it held. Section 7. The Weight of Silence. In the stillness of the evening, the world seemed to hold its breath. The silence was deafening, a heavy blanket that smothered every sound, every whisper of life. It was as if the earth itself was mourning, grieving for something lost, something irretrievable. The world tilted on its axis. Everything I knew, everything I believed in was suddenly thrown into chaos. The familiar became strange, the safe became dangerous. It was as if the very fabric of reality had been torn apart, leaving me adrift in a sea of uncertainty. Memories, fragmented and sharp, flooded my mind. They came in flashes, disjointed and painful, like shards of glass cutting into my consciousness. Each memory was a piece of a puzzle, but the picture they formed was one of horror and despair. I saw faces, heard voices, felt emotions that were not my own, yet they were all too real. The earthquake, the fear, the killings. The ground shook, buildings crumbled, and lives were shattered in an instant. The air was filled with screams, with the sound of sirens, with the chaos of a world turned upside down. And amidst it all, there was blood, so much blood, and me. Standing over the victims, my heart pounding in my chest, my mind racing with questions. Who were they? Why were they here? And most importantly, what had I done? The answers eluded me, slipping through my fingers like sand, my hands slick with blood. The sight of it made me sick, made me want to scream, to run, to hide. But there was no escape, no hiding from the truth. The blood was a testament to my actions, a reminder of the horror I had unleashed. The weight of my actions crushed me. It was a burden I could not bear, a weight that pressed down on me, suffocating me, drowning me in guilt and regret. I was trapped, caught in a web of my own making, with no way out. I was the monster we feared. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut, leaving me breathless, reeling. I had become the very thing I had always feared, the thing I had fought against. I was the darkness, the terror, the nightmare, but how could I be? Why couldn't I remember? The questions echoed in my mind, unanswered, unanswerable. I was lost, adrift in a sea of confusion and fear with no anchor, no guide. The memories were there, just out of reach, taunting me, tormenting me. I was trapped in a nightmare of my own making, a dark, twisted dream from which there was no waking. The walls closed in around me, the shadows whispered my name, and I was powerless to escape. Every step I took led me deeper into the darkness, further from the light. And the worst part was, I was the only one who didn't know it. Everyone else saw the truth, saw the monster I had become, but I was blind, lost in my own delusions. The clock was ticking, time was running out, and I was trapped, alone, in the weight of my silence. The realization dawned slowly, painfully. I was alone, truly alone, in a world that had moved on without me. The silence was my only companion, a constant reminder of my isolation, my guilt, my fear. And in that silence I found the weight of my actions, the weight of my silence, crushing me, suffocating me, until there was nothing left but the darkness. Section 8, Unearthing the Truth. I started digging, frantically searching for answers in the rubble of my own mind. Flashes of memories like shards of glass cut through the fog. My family buried beneath the wreckage, my screams swallowed by the dust and chaos. And Paul, a rescue worker pulling me from the debris, his kind eyes, his gentle touch. He tried to save me, to pull me from the darkness, but I was already gone. Section 9, The Monster Within. The earthquake hadn't just shattered our town, it had shattered my mind. The trauma, the grief, it had created a monster, a shadow self that lurked in the recesses of my subconscious. And this monster, it craved vengeance. It saw enemies in the faces of my fellow survivors. It acted on instinct, driven by a primal need to protect itself, to protect me. Section 10, A Fragmented Mind. The realization was a physical blow. I was both victim and perpetrator, trapped in a prison of my own broken mind. The guilt was suffocating, a heavy cloak I couldn't shed. I had to stop the monster, but how do you fight what lives inside you? How do you outrun your own shadow? The answers, like the memories, remained elusive, lost in the labyrinth of my fractured psyche. Section 11, Echoes of Havoc. In the aftermath of the disaster, the city lies in ruins, a testament to the sheer force of nature's wrath. The once bustling streets are now eerily silent, filled only with the remnants of what used to be. The echoes of the earthquake still reverberate within me. Each tremor, each aftershock, is a reminder of the fragility of our existence. The ground beneath our feet, once so solid and dependable, has betrayed us, leaving behind a landscape of desolation and despair. They whisper the truth of my actions, the horror of what I've done. In the quiet moments, when the world is still, I can hear them. The voices of those I failed, the lives I couldn't save. They haunt me, a constant reminder of my own inadequacies and the weight of my decisions. I am a monster, born of chaos and grief, The devastation around me is not just a result of the earthquake, but a reflection of the turmoil within my own soul. The forest, once a place of refuge and peace, now mirrors my inner darkness, shrouded in mist and shadows, and there is no escape from the echoes of havoc that haunt me. Every corner of this town, every broken building, is a reminder of the destruction that has been wrought. The night brings no solace, only a deeper sense of isolation and despair. The town may be in ruins, but the true devastation lies within me. The physical destruction is but a shadow of the emotional and psychological wreckage that I carry. Each step I take through the rubble is a journey through my own shattered psyche. I am a walking nightmare, a chilling testament to the destructive power of trauma. The streets, once filled with life and laughter, now echo with the silent screams of the past. My presence here is a stark reminder of the fragility of hope and the enduring nature of pain. And as the dust settles, I am left to face the wreckage of my own making. The collapsed buildings, the shattered lives, all stand as monuments to my failures. In the end, it is not the earthquake that has left the deepest scars, but the choices I made in its wake. The echoes of havoc are not just in the world around me, but in the very core of my being, a constant reminder of the price of survival.